And we're starting with Arsenal because it's deal done for Viktor Gyökeres. He will be an Arsenal player. That little stalemate from last week appears to be over. What is it about Arsenal and Gyökeres and doing things on a Sunday as well? It was last night that David Ornstein got active in this Arsenal transfer saga, and effectively Arsenal, Gyökeres have done a deal that satisfies Sporting, and it all just comes down to the fact that Gyökeres and his agent are going to waive some sort of fee which allows Arsenal's offer to basically be what Sporting wants. Arsenal don't pay what Sporting wants, but the money comes in a different way. So amicable, grown-up, mature, and ultimately everybody gets what they want. It's a little bit of a shame that it ends sourly with Gyökeres and Sporting after what has been a great relationship, but this is football, this is how it works. Gyökeres gets his move, Arsenal get their striker. And I think that's the big thing really here. There may well be bigger transfers to come in this summer transfer window. We'll talk about Liverpool, we'll talk about Chelsea in a moment. But let's talk about what this means for Arsenal, because this is a striker. This is a striker that we've spoken about on this channel, and many people have spoken about plenty of times over the last 2 years. Arsenal need a striker. Speaking to Arsenal fans last year, many of them felt it was a disgrace that they didn't get that striker last year. And if they'd had it, maybe a semi-final in the Champions League could have been a final or better. Maybe they would have been closer to Liverpool. So they had to do this. It's taken too long in relation to they should have had one last year. They've now got one, but what a striker they have. I mean, look, I would have loved this player at Manchester United. I'd have took him every day of the week. It's a player that Amorim built in that Sporting system, and he will be the main man for Arsenal. He's got to play every week. He's got to get service, and I think he will. And I think that where people say there's limitations to his game, I've heard people talk about him being like Lukaku. I've heard people saying he's going to flop because it's the Portuguese league, like Darwin Núñez. I think that underestimates and devalues what Gyökeres has done. I mean, he should have won the European Golden Boot. It's only because of this stupid rule about, your goals only count for one, and if you're in the top 5 leagues, it counts as 1.5.
Huge news this evening for Arsenal fans. It is a done deal. Viktor Gyökeres will become an Arsenal player. 63 million euros plus 10 million in add-ons. And I tell you now, I haven't done the maths on this yet, but we'll do it now. That is a £54 million deal. It's an absolutely colossal piece of business. It's an absolutely colossal piece of business. It really is. At £54 million, 1-0 Chelsea, by the way. Chelsea have just taken the lead against Paris Saint-Germain. For such a prolific, dangerous, amazing striker, £54 million is an absolute snip. It's maybe the deal of the century. If he can come to if he can come to Arsenal, if he can deliver the goals, if he can maintain his output, right? For me, they have just picked up an absolute phenom, a predatory goal scorer on every single level. What a player, what a signing. The agreement done in principle. He says, welcome to Chelsea here. Obviously, very, very happy Guna in the comment section. Lloyd here says, Eze, we are coming. Well, look, there's lots of deals. I'm just looking at this goal for a second.
Viktor Gyökeres is going to Arsenal. My dream striker's target, my dream striker signing is going to Arsenal. Well, Osimhen would have been lovely, but his wages were ridiculous. I was hoping with Ruben Amorim we were going to be able to pull Gyökeres. But I've known for the last month that Gyökeres is 100% going to Arsenal. Since it came out that he told Man United he prefers Arsenal, I've known it was going to Arsenal. I had this hope that Arsenal would go for Sesko and then Gyökeres could come begging back to Man United. And I was still hoping that maybe Berta was using this recent Gyökeres news where it looked like Gyökeres to Arsenal was developing as maybe a tactic to get Sesko price lowered. And I was thinking maybe something could happen for Sesko, but I kind of known that for the last week, I've pretty much known that Gyökeres is going to Arsenal. We now know he's 100% going to Arsenal, pending medical and stuff. But I was sort of just hoping this would collapse or they would go for Sesko. It was all a game to get the Sesko price down. So while I'm not surprised Gyökeres is going to Arsenal, and I can't blame him for choosing Arsenal over United because he's 27, he's in the prime of his career, he wants to play Champions League football. He doesn't want to wait for 3 years for Manchester United to sort themselves out, and who knows if we'll even sort ourselves out in 2-3 years. He wants to go to Arsenal, and it sucks. It sucks because not only are Arsenal, who are one of the teams I dislike the most in the world, getting a really good player, but he also was linked to Manchester United. He was also wanted by Manchester United. He was also wanted by Ruben Amorim. And he said no to us and he's gone to Arsenal. So it's the rejection. It's the fact that we had his former manager and still couldn't get him. And he's gone to Arsenal.
I told you all to be patient. I told you all to stop stressing. The here we go was going to be very, very soon. And I said in earlier's video, Fabrizio Romano will come out of an update later today. I also spoke about the deal with Pedro Porro all those months back, how the Sporting president is just looking for the best deal for him. And I spoke about how Sporting notoriously are tough negotiators. Fabrizio Romano has come out of an update in the last half an hour or so. Got the Club World Cup on in the background. There's only about 5 minutes left of that. Chelsea are currently 3-0 up. But an hour ago, Fabrizio Romano did drop some huge news. Make sure you go down and drop a like on the video. If you have
Q&A at the end of the stream. Let's just get stuck into it. So, the biggest news of the night, unfortunately, is in regards to a player who was a target for Man United this summer. But obviously, we've shat it there. We aren't the club we used to be. We don't have the European football. We don't have the ability to entice these players anymore. And he's gone to pig in Arsenal, hasn't he? David Ornstein with the update, dropping the bomber that it is done and agreed, at least in principle. So this is from David Ornstein not that long ago at 8:21, says, Sporting Lisbon confirm agreement in principle reached for Viktor Gyökeres switch to Arsenal. Deal worth 63.5 million euros guaranteed plus 10 million in add-ons. So a total combined fee there of 73.5 million euros, which is what, less than 65 million pounds? It's a pretty decent overall deal that Arsenal have got there. They've not really paid ridiculously over the odds. Yes, it is an expensive deal. It is an expensive player. But, you know, Sporting were bandying around figures like 80 or 90 million euros earlier on in the window. So for them to get an agreed fee altogether, 63.5 million euros, with 10 million of it being paid as add-ons as well later on. That's a pretty good deal, that, for Arsenal, to be fair. And they've got themselves, obviously, a goal-scoring beast, at least in his league that he's been playing in, and 6 and 8 in the Champions League last season. But 54 and 52 last season in all competitions for him at Sporting. That is going to be surely a big pickup for them. We talked about Arsenal missing out on maybe a proper number 9 goal scorer, somebody who can provide those goals.
For Arsenal, mainly because we've been saying it for a very long time. These guys need a striker, and it isn't just about having one guy that's going to start in the striker position. It's about having a striker, a finisher, a guy who strikes fear into the opposition, a guy who impacts the mentality of the opposition, a guy who is scary, a guy who other people can play off, and a guy who will play differently to the way that other players in the team already play. Viktor Gyökeres is all of those things. And Berta and Arteta are kind of doing their thing over this summer, and Arsenal are maybe 1, maybe 2 signings away from being an absolute problem, but are already a problem, with Viktor Gyökeres being a huge part of that. Honestly, on this channel for a very long time, we've been advocating A, for Kai Havertz, B, for Gabriel Jesus, but C, for a third option in there. And, you know, obviously we've seen other options. Obviously we've seen, well, I think Moreno was an interesting one. I enjoy Marino was an interesting one in there. I also think that we obviously saw Trossard. I think we've seen at times Martinelli given that opportunity. We've seen lots of different people, obviously also Saka. There were plenty of other times we've seen people given big opportunities within this side. And it's not that they have spurned them, it's just that they haven't been that striker that Mikel Arteta needs. And I think at times we aren't really very charitable in the analysis of Mikel Arteta. And my main reason is, I think we always assume that Mikel Arteta has got a very fixed way of playing because that's always been the way that people have spoken about him, because that's always been the way that he's been framed, because even he himself, in his own adaptable comments, has been constricted into a corner. He spoke about